Welcome to our podcast. It's just pot. What's the problem? Brought to you by the Every Brain Matters community, a community of advocacy, support, and science that is calling for a cultural change with the widespread use of the Every Brain Matters merchandise. You can find this merchandise at everybrainmatters.org and just click the store button. I'm your host, Aubrey Adams, and I'm a former Colorado mom. I'm also a mom for youth in recovery, and I direct the Every Brain Matters community. On today's podcast, we talk to Raj and Anita as they share how marijuana led to the loss of their son, Aaron, at the age of 18. I have to admit, the first time I spoke to Anita was a moment I'll never forget. When I hung up the phone after our first conversation, I was so shocked and so saddened by what I had just heard. I literally dropped to my knees, and I questioned if I could continue doing this type of work and sharing these tragic stories. But after time, I realized we cannot allow Aaron and other people dying from the effects of marijuana to die in vain. And we have to help the public understand how dangerous and life-threatening marijuana truly is. Welcome, Raj and Anita. Please share a little bit about how Aaron's life was. What was he like?
Aaron, he was a very smart boy. He just finished high school and was just starting college. Before we lost him, he, since he was a child, he was always, very, very smart in the puzzles, geography,
Star Wars.
Oh yeah, he liked Star Wars. Yeah, he used to, be, into different trivia things. He used to read a lot. As he got older, teenage years, play video games, things like that, movies.
He liked to cook.
He liked to cook.
He dreamt of opening a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
He told me he wanted to be a CMA, a certified management accountant. And he was he went to Eastern Tech, which was a magnet high school, and he was in the business program.
Right.
He was really funny.
Yeah.
Really funny.
He was in the future
Everything was
business leaders.
Fun.
FBLA is Future Business Leaders of America. So yeah, he was definitely like entrepreneurial. He wanted to, be in some kind of business or.
He wanted to be friends with everybody. He wanted everybody to like him, and he wanted everyone to get along. He just was a kid who liked peace. He wanted everyone to be in peace and get along. He didn't like strife.
Mm-hmm.
And I noticed, I follow you on Facebook, Anita, and I noticed a lot of family get-togethers, weddings, parties, and he's always dancing, always like
yeah. He was like the life of the party, I'd say. I mean, when he walked in, our family's very conservative and quiet, and he would just brighten up the room. He would say something funny. He would always find something funny when he entered the room and say something, and everyone would start laughing. That's just how he was. So since he's gone, it's just sad all the time.
So yeah, it's tough, Well, we didn't know about the marijuana until the day he passed. That's
actually, we didn't even know if he was using it.
We didn't know
until we got his toxicology.
Right. So, but in hindsight, when you're looking back, in the months prior and probably the year prior or a couple of years back, you're looking back and then you're seeing some signs that, were there that we just never really connected it to marijuana. But now, as much as we know about marijuana, the signs were there. The signs were there, and we just
The paranoia.
we didn't see it.
Yeah, the paranoid
And that
thoughts.
describe some of the behaviors or the changes you saw in Aaron.
From what we understand, and his sister mentioned to us, because she knew a little bit about. I think the first time he used was in middle school.
That's
think
what
that
she
was-
thinks. We
that's what
don't
she
know
thinks.
for sure anything
I
really.
remember in middle school, I was called into the office for, I think Aaron had written something with, I think he was aggressively saying some things to another student.
And it was totally out of his character,
It was
because
out of
Aaron
his-
was a
yeah.
very quiet,
you know,
respectful, like, did not use bad words. He
Yeah,
never even
right.
raised his voice at me. He never even talked back to me. He was just a very easygoing child, funny as anything, but very easygoing. So like what I started noticing is he was becoming more aggressive. Towards me, he was becoming, he was using more foul language. Like, we're a very conservative family. We don't use bad language at all at home. He would just make paranoid type comments to us. He became really secretive. He was in his room a lot. He was playing video games a lot. He was up at night a lot. He was sleeping a lot. And it was hard for us to differentiate, we didn't think drugs, because Aaron has always had sleep problems since he was a newborn. He even had a sleep study at 3 years old. So it wasn't new. Like, we didn't think, well, maybe he's using marijuana. That might be why he's sleeping a lot. We thought,
But yeah, we found out, after the fact that, sometimes when he would go to work, he wasn't even working. He was, picking up people. They would have, marijuana smoking in their cars. They would be doing it in their cars. But the other thing that was probably, I did have a smell in his car, and I thought maybe he was giving rides to people that were doing it. Because when I asked him, are you using this stuff? He's like, you really think that way about me, Dad? Like, I would use that. Yeah, but not just the marijuana. I believe he was doing the dabs, and I think
edibles.
there's no odor with the dabs.
Yeah.
So, we didn't know that.
Yeah,
that
we
part of it.
never smelled marijuana on him.
Yeah.
We never smelled it. I noticed, well, the family that he was friends with, he made it seem like, okay, so the family actually lived like 20 minutes away from our house, and they lived they still live in a Section 8 townhouse, and they didn't own a car. So Aaron was, we go to church every Sabbath, and, we teach him about helping people who are less fortunate as us. So we taught, he was like, well, they don't have a car, and, we both work together. She was my supervisor. So can I just drop her at work with me, or like pick her up and drop her at work? And then he would even, like, when he was not working, he would go pick her up from work just so she wouldn't have to take an Uber at night, because they worked late hours, because it was a restaurant, a chain restaurant. But we thought, yes, our son is learning the good Christian values that we raised him with. My grandfather was a pastor, and we were thinking, okay, we're doing something right. And he's helping the poor like we're supposed to do.
Yeah, I think they ended up being business partners. And I think, they started this edible business. She had a medical marijuana card, so they would get the marijuana that way, and they would use it and make their edibles.
Looking back now, when do you think Aaron started using marijuana?
So I think back in middle school, that was probably the experimental part. I think once he got into high school and got into, working at the restaurant, that's where it just,
we really saw changes in him.
Exploded more, and it became a lifestyle and not just experimental anymore. So
he acted like a thug. I mean, towards me especially. Like, he would. I remember what really got my attention was when he tried to punch me. I was trying to kiss him. He was asleep on the sofa because he drops his sister at the bus stop, and he was asleep. And you know, teenage boys don't let their moms kiss or hug them, so he looked like an angel to me. You know, so I went over there to kiss him on the forehead, and I was about to kiss his forehead, and he jumps up, and if I didn't back away, he would have punched me right in the face. And I remember looking at his fist and then looking at his eye, and it was really dark, and it wasn't Aaron.
Now here comes the hard part. Can you describe the night Aaron died?
I made the mistake of calling him when my husband and I woke my husband up, and we checked his room, and Aaron was at work, so we thought this is the best time to check. My husband found a black box, and it was locked. And I just wanted to know what was in it. Raj was pretty sure that that's where he kept the marijuana. And so I called him at work. Raj was like, just leave him alone, talk to him when he comes home. I was like, no, I want to know because if he's been lying to us this whole time, I want to know. So I called Aaron at work, and I told him, I said, Aaron, no more lies. I want the truth. We found this box. If you don't give me the combination, you're going to be, I'll just take a hammer and break it. And he's like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. I was just saving money. It's just money in there. I was saving money for a car, which we knew he was trying to buy a car. He had his own car, but he wanted to, his sister was going to be getting her learner's permit, and he wanted to give his car to her. So when I opened it up, there was just cash in the box. And I was confused, and I was like, I was like, I thought that, that's what I was going to find, marijuana. And then I put my hand to my nose, and I smelled the skunk smell. And I looked closely in the box. There were little tiny pieces of what looked like herbs. So I called him back, and I told him, you're in really big trouble. And I was probably the maddest I've ever been to him. And it was the biggest mistake I ever made. So if I was to tell a parent, if you find your child in possession of any kind of illicit drug, don't confront them. Wait for them to come home. Wait for them to be in a pleasant mood before you talk to them. Have a plan just in case the child decides to do something hurtful to themselves or to others. I didn't know as much as I know now. And I made the biggest mistake of my life, was to call and tell him that he was in trouble, that he was going to lose his car, he was going to lose his job, he was going to lose his privileges. And the next thing we know, he didn't come home. We went looking for him. We have an app called Find Friends. He wasn't coming home. He wasn't answering his calls. And Raj.
Yeah, I finally called him because he wasn't answering his mom's calls, so I called him. He answered the phone. You could tell he was crying, and I said, and I think that's probably after he crashed his vehicle, because he ran the vehicle off the road. It's an overpass that goes over I-95, which is a major highway, and it hit a fence. Apparently airbags came out and things like that, but he was still alive at that point. Because when I asked him, where are you? He said, I'm on I-95. And I was kind of, confused, because he never usually comes home that way.
He takes Route 1.
He takes a different way to come home. And I said, what are you doing on I-95? And he said, he started saying, I'm sorry, Dad. I'm sorry, Dad. I love you, Dad. And I said, he just basically said, I didn't want you to find what we found, because, but that actually, what we found in the box wasn't actually what he had. He actually had another stash of marijuana somewhere else in his room, which we didn't find till after we cleaned his room.
After he died,
This was after he
on the
died.
day of the funeral, and after we came back from the cemetery, I just had this overwhelming feeling like I need to clean his room, and that's when we found it.
Yeah.
So we gave it to the police.
And so, I just told him, come home. We'll talk about it. We'll figure this out.
But he wasn't himself on the phone at all. He was like,
there were
all over the place in the
Yeah.
few minutes he was on the conversation with his dad.
See, I think
Not
we didn't-
anything like
we
himself.
didn't find out about a lot of these details until after he died, and we were able to get into his Snapchat. There were conversations between him and his coworkers. Apparently he had some marijuana or some, other paraphernalia in his car, which he was again paranoid that people are going to find it. The police are after him, things like that. So he was in a psychosis state.
Or something.
Somewhat,
He thought somebody was after him.
yeah, somebody actually told him to eat the stuff, and we, even we're still even working with a lawyer right now to figure out, because they ruled his death a suicide, but if he was in a psychosis, I don't know if you can really call it a suicide. I mean, I guess that may be up to debate, but because he was not planning to kill himself that night, because he had plans. He was going to a prom. He was going to go, look at
Test drive
cars with his cousin. Yeah.
He didn't give anything away.
No, yeah.
He had no plans. He had so many plans.
So the only explanation I can think of is just, he had a psychotic event that night.
So
And-
what happened after you talked to him on the phone, Raj?
So after that, I mean, it just, the phone went dead basically. And I think that was probably when he got hit by, he crashed his car on the banks of I-95, and he went out into the highway. And that's where there's still some controversy, because, there's supposedly, the driver that struck him said that he laid down. His
not
autopsy report shows that his tibias were broken, his legs were broken. That looks like that would happen in a standing position. So there is some controversy there. I mean, his injuries do not look consistent with laying down on the
It wasn't
ground.
a crash injury.
There were another eyewitness that said he was thrown.
Yeah.
So, there's still some things we're still dealing with,
Yeah.
to, thoroughly more investigate what happened that night. But we strongly feel it was a psychosis that he was in. He didn't know where he was. He didn't have his glasses. He was blind. So I don't think he realized where he was in the highway. I
I don't think he even realized he was in the highway.
he was talking to a friend that night, when he crashed his vehicle, and that friend was supposed to be coming to pick him up. So I was assuming maybe he was trying to get to I-95 because that's where his friend was going to be coming. But I don't think he realized where he was in the highway. And, he got struck by two vehicles. And
Well, there was another witness that didn't come forward that we found later, who said that he looked confused and dazed, and there was no doubt that he did not know that he was going to get hit by a car.
Yeah.
They said that he was confused. He was standing on the road like he didn't know where he was.
yeah, so that's still, we're trying to, work that out with the lawyer and trying to figure out if they can change that, because the police had a lot of different, they published some things saying that he left our house and went to and crashed his car. He never came home that night.
What did Aaron's toxicology report say?
And they just did a general toxicology of random drugs and said he was clean, but they never checked for THC.
THC is not part of Maryland's toxicology.
Right. So,
And in the police report, it was very clear. They stated how strong the smell of
Yes.
the marijuana, the skunk smell, was emanating from the car. It was so strong that when we went to pick up his car 1 week after his death, we couldn't even
Yes.
breathe.
yeah.
It was so strong.
So that's why I feel like he listened to his friends and used the marijuana and had a psychotic event, because he was just trying to get rid of the evidence basically and not get caught. But, it just, got him,
He had two different types of THC in his system. He had Delta 9 and Delta 11.
That is so shocking that they didn't even test for marijuana when marijuana is such a popular drug. It's like the medical community has some type of drug bias. We know that Delta 11, THC, and a toxicology report indicates marijuana was consumed through the digestive system. So let's revisit the sequence of events of the night Aaron lost his life. Aaron left his job. He crashed his car. And then
He crashed into a tree.
He crashed into a tree, and then he got hit on the highway.
He
And-
got out of his car and
Yeah,
walked onto the highway
Okay.
at
And-
10:45 at night.
And so there was a friend he was in contact with telling him to eat whatever marijuana products he had on him or consume them.
Yeah, there was a text group
Of people from his job.
coworkers from his job. So he was talking to multiple people by Snapchat, and then he was also on his on
FaceTime or something while he was
FaceTime with his
driving.
friend. So he was not focused. He was
He
not
was all over the
concentrating.
place.
That could also contribute to his reckless driving. Not only the marijuana itself, but he was just they were texting, they were FaceTiming. He's under the influence.
Plus,
all those things contribute.
the car, he hit the tree so violently, he had marks on his head, so he could have also had a concussion on top of everything.
True.
He could have had a hematoma. And when we asked the medical examiner, she couldn't tell whether he had the injury before getting hit by the cars or or after.
Yeah, so it is possible he had that.
He could have had a concussion on top of everything, was really confused, like the witness said, and walked out on the road not realizing where he was.
Yeah.
And when he got out on the highway, he was obviously hit and then killed.
Yes, and the first car that hit him was a 28-year-old with a history of a marijuana DUI. At least two records that we found of marijuana DUI and robbery and other evidence that he too himself was a marijuana user. So what are the chances that your son is on marijuana and then gets hit by somebody who has a history of marijuana use, which the cops did not test that guy either. They didn't check him. They didn't do anything. And they just believed his story where he said, and I'm sure that he was probably scared and didn't want to be held responsible because he had a history of criminal records. So probably made up the story that Aaron was lying down on the road when he ran over him.
Inconsistent with his
It doesn't
injuries.
make any sense.
Yeah.
I can't even imagine how, just with all these factors involved, how absolutely painful this is to relive and to figure out the missing pieces. And so how did you find out Aaron was deceased?
So that was the hardest thing. I mean, when I heard silence on the phone, we knew from the Snapchat app where he was. So I drove out there to where that overpass was because it was around that area. And I saw that a lot of the cars were stopped around that area. I didn't want to, I don't know, I guess something in me did not want to go by myself. I went back and picked up my wife to bring her to the scene, and we went to the overpass and we could see the police was doing CPR on his body. And we,
It's like the worst nightmare a parent could ever have.
Yeah.
I looked down from the bridge and because all we saw was police cars. So I looked down. I looked down. I mean, I looked out and I saw Aaron's car was against the tree. So I looked down from the bridge onto 95 and it was Aaron. He was lying flat on his back. He had his jeans on. His top was up and the cop was doing compressions. And I screamed and I said, Aaron, it's mom, I'm like, I'm thinking, he's going to wake up. You forget you're a nurse at this point.
So we had to drive around because, to get onto the Beltway, there's to get to the other side. And, when we got to the scene, they already had covered him. And
he already had a sheet by the time we got
he
there.
was gone.
And it just felt like a
and they
dream.
wouldn't let us see the body. They didn't want us to get, because it was, I guess, a scene. They didn't want us
Yeah,
And,
So
that's how we found Aaron.
and so when did you get the toxicology report that said that he had no drugs in his system?
so they did that, immediately, the toxicology, but we didn't get it for a while. Like, I mean, I think they did that, when they were doing the autopsy, that's just the standard thing they do. But let's see, he passed in March.
March
And-
27th,
and
2019.
Yeah, so we didn't know until, I think I had to request them to check for THC, which didn't make any sense why I had to make that request, even though his car smelled like it. They found the burnt like substance, which is probably a dabs. I mean, there's stuff that, they described in the police report, and they're not, there just seems like they're just sweeping it under the rug. These are serious things. They need to be checking for that, because it's, these are mind altering substances, and it's definitely contributed to the accident that happened.
Yep,
And
they found the other marijuana, like a homemade dab. It's now that
they
I
found the
understand what
grinder.
the,
Yeah, they
now
found the
that we
grinder.
understand, like we're well educated about marijuana and the different types of marijuana. What they described was like a dab rig, like a homemade dab rig.
And the way I understand it, you had to request for them to test for the presence of marijuana THC, not only
3
once,
times.
but 3 times. Okay,
3 times.
Yeah. And so it wasn't
Before they
until
would do it.
May. He passed in March. It wasn't until May where we actually were able to get the result.
And did they give you a reason why they wouldn't test for marijuana?
They said that it was just not part of the routine tests for the toxicology, which
Yeah.
makes no sense, because the most commonly used illicit drug in Maryland, if not the United States and possibly the world, is marijuana.
And then what was his levels like? What was his marijuana level?
Very high. He had, I mean, it was equal to marijuana intoxication.
And did they put marijuana intoxication as a contributing factor? No.
Nope, they just put it as a suicide. They didn't, we at that point, my husband and I did tremendous amounts of research on our own, and presented the case that it could have been a psychosis from all the research that we did, from finding out that, he had a lot of THC, just reached out to different people.
The medical examiner, she's not even a full-time medical examiner.
She was
She's from
just PRN.
California, and she comes in here and does these exams. I appealed to the chief medical examiner and appealed the ruling because of the inconsistencies in her report, about the, how he was injured. She even said that he was not circumcised when he was circumcised, just some
She's
things
a
like
medical
that.
doctor. She should know the difference.
And I pointed these things out. And what was interesting is the chief medical examiner resigned that same year.
Wow.
So that's kind of interesting.
It was a lot of things happening at the same time that Aaron died.
Yeah,
Well,
It was,
you guys are both wonderful parents. I mean, there needs to be an Aaron law, that all these, deaths need to have, the toxicology reports need to test for marijuana. It's unbelievable.
what's even more unbelievable, I'm sorry to cut you off, is that my daughter, her school, when I came home, and I was devastated after Aaron died, and I was blaming myself. I was full of guilt. I thought to myself, if I didn't call him, he would be alive. If I didn't say anything to him, he would be alive. And my daughter came up to me and she's like, Mom, it's not your fault. She said, it's not your fault. It's my fault. And I said, what do you mean? She said, I knew he was using marijuana. I didn't tell you because some people came to my school. She was in high school then. And she said, these people came to my school and they had a general science assembly with the science students. And one of the people who was talking was a cancer patient. And she was telling high schoolers, teenagers, that there's nothing wrong with marijuana. She came to a public high school and told the kids that marijuana is just an herb and it's good for pain. What did she say? Pain, anxiety, and depression. Why would you tell teenagers that? So here we are spending tremendous amounts of time and energy into teaching our kids about drugs and how harmful it is. But people are allowed to come to our kids' high schools and talk to them and teach them that marijuana is an herb. I couldn't even believe it. I was so angry after that. I was furious.
Absolutely
So,
right.
and why would you come to a high school and say that? It just didn't make any sense to me.
That's awful that that happened, and that school should be held responsible. They should be held accountable, allowing a person to come in there and say that, because that influenced your daughter, that influenced your son, and how dare they? How dare they lie to them about such a dangerous drug, very dangerous drug.
They came to, they had, it was a general science assembly. Like, it wasn't just it was literally a science assembly, which makes no sense. Scientifically, it's been proven without a doubt that marijuana is damaging to any child who uses it under the age of 25. It causes irreversible brain damage. It causes schizophrenia, bipolar disease. I mean, psychosis. They had no business being in the school whatsoever. I firmly believe that if they didn't do things like that, Raina might have told us, and maybe we would have been able to get Erin help. But because her, she was thinking, oh, well, these are my teachers telling us this, there must be nothing wrong with it.
Yeah. Could you take me back? What happened with your life after you left the scene where Aaron lost his life? What happened after that? How was your life after that?
Devastating.
Yeah.
Took me 2 years to even not feel the pain.
I mean,
we're totally different people. I mean, I'm definitely a totally different person now. I mean, do not trust people anymore.
Well, we buried my mother-in-law, in 2014. So, going through, Aaron, I kind of was familiar with the procedures and, things like that, of how to, what to do. And so I was kind of trying to handle some of those things. My wife was just not in a state,
I was
there she could do any
devastated.
kind of thing like that. And I mean, I was sad. My son, I didn't really have the time to really take it in. I think, we took about a month off of work, and also, didn't go to church for a while. And then we tried to kind of get back into our routine and our life in a sense, after that. But I don't think it was until COVID hit where I just, I realized my son is not here, and, because everything, when everything shuts down, again, both my wife and I are healthcare workers, so we were still working. But, when everybody shut down, everybody's at home, they're doing homeschooling, and my son is not here. I feel like I'm closer with my other 3 kids now since Aaron's death, because, we that was such a devastating loss for us that, sometimes you just take things for granted. And, I'm trying to focus. I know it's not that we don't want to forget Aaron, but at the same time, we have 3 other kids right now that need us too. And, they're also healing from this loss. And, I'm trying to focus on them. When Aaron's birthday comes around, when his, death anniversary comes around, we're usually at the gravesite. He was buried probably about an hour from where we live, so we can't go there every day because it's where his grandmother was buried. So, we put them in the same, in the same cemetery, but we definitely visit him on holidays and Christmas and things like that. I mean, it's, we're always praying for him, and we're hoping that we're going to see him again. Our religion, we feel that, we believe in God and that he's going to come, and, we're going to see our loved ones again when he comes. So, that gives me hope. And that's, part of our religion that we believe. So, he's not gone forever. He's just resting right now, and we'll see him when God comes to take us home.
The sad part is the family that used Aaron. The reason they handpicked Aaron because they knew that Aaron was very smart. He was in the business program, and they wanted him to help them start this medical marijuana dispensary because they had a rap sheet. They could not apply and get their own license for a medical dispensary. They were using Aaron to do that. So this family faced no criminal charges because the police said marijuana is decriminalized. So not even though there's overwhelming evidence that this is what this family did, they're facing nothing, and they're living in a free Section 8 townhouse, and us taxpayers are paying for them, and they're still selling marijuana from their house, work at different restaurants, and they get children addicted to drugs and then use those kids. And, it's devastating to us because all we want to do is educate other parents and other children to be aware, because this family, this is not just an isolated family or an isolated event. There are people like this in the world, and there are more and more people like this in this world now more than ever since the legalization of marijuana, because people now think, oh, well, it's fine. There's nothing wrong with it. It's legalized, so I can do what I want. I don't need to face any charges. Well, this family gave my 14-year-old marijuana in a brownie for her birthday, and she almost fell off the balcony. And she herself told the cops. The cops told us, we can't do anything. Marijuana is decriminalized. She was 14 years old. These are adults in their 30s, late 30s and 40s, giving my daughter that.
Anita, that is shocking. That is so unacceptable. I can't believe they didn't charge them with something. No adult should give a child marijuana. Did you approach Aaron's job and ask him if they knew about their employees using marijuana?
They don't test their workers because of the turnaround and staff, and it's just too expensive. And there's no laws that make them test anybody. So you have to be very careful, with who you associate with. And, so not only are the kids friends, but, their coworkers. I mean, you have to be careful because, again, we thought that's good. We're teaching him responsibility to, help pay for his car insurance and things like that. When I was growing up, that's what we did. If you're going to drive, then you need to, help pay for some of the expenses. And we thought, helping him have a car that he'll be able to go to school, go to college, and, but I didn't think he would, misuse that privilege, to be doing this type of business that he was doing.
Now listen to how marijuana changed Aaron and how Aaron was failed in so many ways.
I can tell you that Aaron was not the Aaron that we raised. The marijuana definitely changed him. He did not have any kind of criminal behavior before he started marijuana. He was a wonderful child to have. I was blessed to have him I'm blessed to call him my son. I know now from all the science, all the research papers I've read, all the wonderful people I've met, and the researchers, doctors, scientists that I've met through Parents Opposed to Pot. That's actually what I did after Aaron died. I put all my energy into learning as much as I could and to spread the truth about this horrible, evil drug. I tell anyone who will talk to me or even listen to me, I talk to everyone about it.
Another interesting fact is his primary care doctor resigned also, shortly after he died. And, the frustrating thing is they won't talk to parents about what's going on with these. Aaron was 18 when he passed, but, at a certain point, they don't inform the parents if there's anything going on, even if when we ask, about, I think my wife had asked his doctor,
So Aaron was failed every way possible. He was failed by the teachers, by the school system. He was failed by the people he worked with, the adults that worked with him, the adults that hired him. He was failed by the justice system, the police that just didn't care to do their job properly and just put his death down as a suicide. He was failed by the medical examiner who didn't do a proper job because she's overworked and it's just a PRN job. He was failed in every step of the way. That's how he fell through the cracks and died. Yes, me and my husband have responsibility.
We didn't have this education that we're getting now from Parents Opposed to Pod and everything that you are putting out there. Now we know.
We know.
And we're trying to,
And we're thankful.
We're thankful for it. We want, everyone to know. And I get on, the talk radio sometimes, and I mention the website, when they're talking about marijuana and they're, trying to find, any kind of research about it, I tell them to go to that website, and look at some of the studies that are done, so because you guys, they, whenever they talk about, like this COVID vaccine, they always say, where's the science behind it? So when it comes to marijuana, where the science is actually showing that it's not a good drug, and, they need to pay attention to the science, because it's there. They just choose, some people just choose to ignore it.
Yes, it's very interesting how we're supposed to pay attention to the science when it comes to COVID, but not when it comes to marijuana, right?
Right.
There's actually science that shows that marijuana users are even more at risk for COVID, because what does marijuana do? It decreases your immune system.
Yep.
Why would you give something like that to a cancer patient? They're already immunocompromised from the chemo and the radiation.
Yes.
And their own disease. It makes absolutely no sense.
Yeah, I feel like we're back in the 40s when everybody thought cigarettes were normal and fine for everybody. Now, this is marijuana. I don't know how many more kids have to die and, tragic things have to happen before people realize that it's not a good thing for you.
What do you want people to know about marijuana, the industry, and the legalization of marijuana?
What the industry is really doing is using us here in America and around the world as guinea pigs to see what this drug actually does. While they're making all the money, we're the ones who are suffering the pain. So my whole goal is to educate and share my story, share Aaron's story. Aaron's not here to come to tell you, stay away from this drug. So we're his voice, and all I can do is tell you his story, and then hopefully you make the right choice and stay away from it. Stay away from all drugs. Where do these kids get their drugs from? Instagram, Snapchat. Who are these people selling it? Who are these people selling these drugs to these kids? They're drug dealers, and they're dangerous people. That's what I want the world to know. You cannot sign up for this, because if you do, you're literally asking for drug dealers to enter your home, and they are going to do it. They don't follow rules. They don't care about laws. They're going to do what they want to get their money. And they don't care if your child is going to die because of it. That's just the truth. So that's part of the message I want people to know, that you can be living your life completely by the law, but drug dealers don't follow rules. They don't care about your life or anybody else's. And by legalizing these drugs, you're literally opening the door to your house to drug dealers. Literally.
Please share more on how Aaron's death affected your family.
I died with Aaron. Literally, I died with Aaron. I'm not the person you see in front of you now is not who I was when Aaron was alive. You lose a part of you and you never gain it back. And from all the trauma that we experienced since Aaron's death, we will never be the same again. Our kids are suffering. They were so close to their brother. I mean, they'll never be normal.
Yeah, and I feel like sometimes, things happen for a reason. And if, us spreading the education saves another child, or more, then, I can never justify my son's death. But, again, somehow, this did give us an opportunity to be more educated about this issue. And I feel like he can probably rest in peace if we can save more other children on his behalf.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that we're just Aaron's voice.
Raj and Anita, do you have any final messages for our listeners?
I just try to stay away from it. You know, it's not good for you, no matter what the media tells you, or these celebrities or anybody that's using it. Stay away from it. There's no benefit from it. I think it's just going to give you pain in the long run.
We can't trust the media to share the truth. So I think we as parents have to take that reign and do it ourselves. We have the power to do it. We have the power to change the world. We don't need to rely on the journalists to tell our stories. We can do it ourselves. We have all these social medias. They can be used for bad and they can be used for good. And I really just, one of the things I want to make sure is the Indian community, we come from an Indian community that's very, very conservative. They like to hide things under. Asian communities are the same way. They like to, not talk about this stuff. But the truth is, it's happening everywhere.
The definition of courage is strength in the face of pain or grief. Raj and Anita, you are courageous, and you have set an example for all of us. Thank you for being Aaron's voice and sharing his story with us. Thank you for sharing your son with us. Every Brain Matters looks forward to working with you to spread education on the harms of marijuana. Our deepest condolences to you and your family. To our viewers, to our listeners, let's take a moment of silence to remember Aaron right now. Every Brain Matters is a community of support, advocacy, and science. We call for a cultural change by the use of our logo on our merchandise to make a visual public awareness that truly states Every Brain Matters. Visit our website at everybrainmatters.org and click on the store button. We'll see you next time on our podcast. It's just pot. What's the problem?